This is our 17th episode. So,
Oh, 17. Oh, well, that's awesome because that goes to an 8, which is the infinity loop, which we were talking.
oh, well, that's kind of perfect for what we're talking about today then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's great. Okay, so what we're starting today with the idea that is ignorance bliss? Is ignorance bliss? I mean, we've all had that thought. God, I wish I didn't know that. Now that I know this, that calls for a certain level of accountability and responsibility. So take it away, Claire. Claire's got a ledger today, and I'm like, I want to talk about all these things in a million different ways, and Claire is going to keep us focused and organized.
Well, I don't know about that because I kind of took it in a bunch of different ways too. So, today's topic, first of all, comes from my lovely, beautiful friend, Christy Smith. So, thank you, Christy, for um, just submitting some thoughts and some questions for us to explore. If any of you listening have something you'd like for us to discuss, please don't hesitate. Reach out, email us. We put our emails and our Instagrams in the show notes. So this is kind of our first audience request, and this comes from a place, I know Christy well, of we some of us are constantly seeking, constantly looking for growth, ways that we can change and evolve. um for me, there's been this idea that there's like a place to get to, like enlightenment is the goal, whatever the hell that looks like, and that's been something I've had to deconstruct. But at the same time, we live with this paradox of many of us are wired to continually evolve. We're seeking all the time. We're asking the big questions like, who am I? What am I here to do? What's the meaning of life? And on the other end of that spectrum is also this concept of ignorance is bliss. And at some point, our minds kind of have to short circuit and give up so that we can move beyond the thinking mind into ecstasy and bliss. And in those states, we don't have the questions anymore of who am I, what am I here to do, what's the meaning of life. There's like a certain angst to that seeking. But once we move past the thinking mind, that kind of falls away and we're able to just be versus figure it out.
Okay, well, spoiler alert. Okay, so if y'all don't want to get to the what is the meaning of all this, and I can relate to that, seeking and wanting to know, like, how was the earth, seeded and populated, and where are we really from? And you can go down so many rabbit holes and alleyways to try and figure it all out. You've got Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which is a beautiful book. The meaning of it all, to be the expression of love. I mean, literally, that's it. Spoiler alert. And I have read a gazillion books and have made myself loopy with like, oh my God, I just found out that blah, 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 blah. And did you know what? Did you know this isn't true? None of this part is true. Did you know that blah, 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 blah? I can say a million things. At the end of it, okay, so what? I still wake up every day, brush my teeth, take the trash out, feed my cat, and accomplish some tasks. Knowing all this is interesting and illuminating, but if it interferes with my ability to be in peace and stillness and the fullest expression of love, I'm kind of losing the point.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of like a little thread, and if you can keep pulling that thread forever, infinitely. And some do. And maybe people who are maybe almost like driven mad with their search for whatever it is, if it's scientific knowledge or whatever. And I've noticed within myself and with people I know that a lot of times this search for information and the facts and truth, it's a bit of a defense mechanism. I feel safer holding up a study and saying, look at the facts here, or whatever. And over the past couple of years, actually the power of gnosis, gnosis, is that wisdom and that knowledge just that comes through experience and from our own inner knowing. Gnosis has become so much more valuable to me, my personal inner knowing, versus what can I look up? What can I prove with facts? What can I back up so that I feel legitimate in what I'm saying? And now I have to feel comfortable just being like, I just know this to be true for me.
Well, and Claire, the way in which we have gathered information historically is we go to the library, right? Or we read a book, or, now in more modern times, we're getting news, or maybe on Twitter, you're getting some information.
Yes, TED Talks.
This is how, this person, and you know what, if they've got a lot of letters behind their name and they've gone to some really fancy schools, they are the experts, and it's all BS. I mean, and it's not to minimize anyone's hard-won, earned wisdom and that science mind, but the truth for one is not necessarily the truth for the other, and your truth isn't my truth. Sometimes our truths overlap a little bit, but guess what truth is? Energy expressed as love. That's the only truth. That's the only real truth, because we can't all have the same truth. And so it's hysterical that we spend all this time trying to get someone to understand the truth. It's like, what? This is ridiculous.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
Well, and I know that for my own personal development, those questions were really important at a specific time and a specific place. And I cycle. I will go through energetic periods. I can feel a different energy in my body that's pushing me forward. And maybe forward's not the right word. Pushing me out of my stationary place. Go read this book. Go look up this. Talk to someone about this. Figure out what you think and what you believe about this. There are times in my life that happens. Then there are also times in my life where I can feel the energy is like, sit down. We're not learning anything new right now. We're done. We're just digesting. Right. So for me, it's really that pendulum swing of like, gather new information, new experiences, reflection. And now we are integrating. It's kind of like the seed goes into the ground, it grows up, and then it goes back in the ground,
Well, I think that's a really good point, Claire. I mean, the first sort of step in, I guess, sovereignty, right? Like, and what does that word mean? Free to know who I am, the truth of who I am, without being easily influenced by outside factors. I know the truth of who I am. Well, first I need to wake up out of this, the sleep, the dream that many of us are in. I mean, we are just, life is busy and beautiful and difficult and exhausting and energizing. And we have so much that we're doing. Now I have to make sure that my child is doing some select sports so that they can get ahead and they understand the value of teamwork, but at the same time, they need to get good grades so they can get into a good college. And I also need to make money and keep a clean house, but I want my house to be beautiful so that my friends will think I have arrived and the car broke down. And okay, so all right, that keeps us pretty busy. And at some points in our life, there's a little space. There's a little space. And we go, what? I'm a little bit more aware of what's going on inside of me, what's going on outside of me. So the ability to bring awareness is the first, I think, step towards whatever you want to call it, enlightenment, or accessing that gnosis, that wisdom that lies within.
Yeah, so the questions are definitely valuable,
Yes.
but I'm guessing that many of you who are listening have probably also felt the burnout of like, if I continue down this path, I'm going to make myself insane. So there's got to be a boundary there, and I just, I love looking at old stories because I think they hold beautiful truths for us. I think about all the stories that we have as humans that we continue telling, reading, passing down, that come with warnings. And I would love to hear your thoughts about this, Julie, because I've got some thoughts of my own. But our very first story about this from the Bible is Adam and Eve, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Not the, when I was growing up, I thought it was similar to the Greek myth of Pandora, like, don't open the box, don't open the box. Well, what does she do? Of course, she opens the box, and then all evil, is freed into the world. This is different. Eve eats the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. And then that, according to the myth, begins the separation of man from and humans from their divine essence. So that's the very first story, that warning of like, ooh, this knowledge is something that the divine, that God did not want us to access. But I saw a meme the other day that was like, God knew exactly what they were doing. How do you get humans to do something that you want them to do? Tell them not to do it, right? So maybe there's a way we could kind of flip that myth on its head a little bit.
Well, and I believe a little bit differently about that, we're being, there is an energy, whether you want to call it evil, or that wants us to not be awake and aware. And so, the Bible basically like, ooh, well, because of all that seeking, that's what happened. That's why everything went amok for y'all. So you probably shouldn't do that. So I'm like, And Adam, in one of my channeled messages, it was like ADAM, ATOM, the atoms of us, right? So I think there's so much in that Adam and Eve story, but they're also the Kundalini energy, which is the serpent, right? So, ooh, the serpent came to warn them. And it's like, okay, well, and I mean, we're probably going off in a million tangents, but I think the point that you're trying to make is that sometimes this quest or thirst for knowledge can become burdensome and even destructive. So we're walking that razor's edge here, folks, because if you are seeking so much information that it is making you feel kind of crazy or taking you out of the flow, which is being in flow, which is the primordial life force energy that we're supposed to have flowing within us and ride upon through life. If that information seeking is taking you out of flow for extended periods of time, that doesn't serve you. If the information that you are engaging in is activating energy, excitement, you can feel it in your body, right? Where you're like, oh my God, this is so interesting. I had no idea. Great. Yeah, that's great. Keep doing that. Read that. That's good. You feel it. You feel the flow. But if you're taking an information or knowledge and you start getting tight and and it's okay, you can have moments of that, right? When our reality starts, unraveling a little bit, you're going to feel a little uncomfortable. But if your quest for this knowledge perpetuates a feeling inside yourself that all is not well, this is really fucked up. I mean, this world's really fucked up, and I gotta escape this planet because we're being controlled. And when I got my social security number, I became a slave. And I mean, okay, I don't really want to know that. And I mean, I know it, maybe, perhaps somebody said that, and I run around with that. How do I feel about that? Not super great. So maybe just don't continue pulling that thread for a whole lot longer.
Yeah, and as we know, knowledge is power. And so a lot of these stories, that warning, it's really because the players are seeking the power, right? So it comes back to your question, I believe, from last week, that was like, why do you want this power? And maybe that was a couple of weeks ago, but the stories of like Icarus, he flies too close to the sun, even though he's a man, he's flying. It's the first time that he's kind of making that transformation, and then it's like, oh, he goes too high, plummets to his death. Frankenstein tries to create life out of inanimate objects, and he does, but what happens? He ends up creating a monster that ends up destroying his life and everyone he loves. And then it goes on and on. So it's not even just knowledge, it's the pursuit of knowledge for power to act as a type of god that somehow goes very wrong. But I'm struggling with that, because I do believe we are creators in the image of God. So where does it go wrong? Like, where is that warning coming from? When do we know we're flying too high?
Well, I do think it goes back to what you brought up. Why? Why am I seeking this knowledge? Am I seeking it for understanding of who I am, and from where and whence I came? Because that's what the guides just said, where and whence I came. In order to move forward as a human, as a species, it would be important to have an understanding, albeit limited, from where we came, so that we are able to choose where we would like to go forward, what we would like to move into. So without an understanding of that, and then an integration of that understanding, we are not able to assess where we would like to journey next.
Oh, that's beautiful. Like the whole purpose of understanding our history. That's super. And here's what we're seeing, and just in kind of modern day technology development, is maybe someone has a beautiful purpose for developing a certain technology, but like Pandora's box, it's out of the box. Cat's not going back in the bag. So then it's up for grabs. Anyone can use it regardless of their intention. Exactly. So a perfect example of this is the designer baby fad that's going around. The original technology is using IVF and gene splicing and testing to determine if the fetus that you're carrying has genetic diseases, or anything that would inhibit their quality of life. That was the original intention. Once that technology's out of the bag, what else do you think people can do with this technology? We want my baby to have brown eyes, and we want it to be a girl, which you can totally choose gender now. And so where does it stop?
And who decides what is a quality of life? Who? So, I happen to have many people in my family with disabilities, an unusual number of people with disabilities. And science, first of all, none of us, had we known, would have said, yeah, sign me up for that. That'll be really fun. Let's do 2 of those, actually. That'll be super great. People don't do that. But I wouldn't change anything. And I don't think my brothers and sisters who have kids with disabilities, because they've been such a gift, such a blessing, such an opportunity for me to access more love inside of myself. And without these children, I would have been like, I'm a nice person. I'm loving. I'm good. I'm fine. I have grown so much because of the presentations of life that science would deem disposable.
Well, then it brings in the whole question of eugenics, and going back to our history, where have we towed that line, and not just towed it, but really crossed the line of the eugenics? Someone or a controlling force deciding who's allowed to live and what kind of life they're allowed to have based on genetics. So that's a super slippery slope. And everything that you just said, I'll post a link to this article that I found. But yes, people are bringing up these questions, and I'm glad they are.
Well, and let's go back to the study of epigenetics, which states and supports that our genetic expression is influenced and altered by the environment in which it is found. So if you're looking, at a potential life and saying these are the genes that are these, you carry these genes, these are a problem, you don't want these. You don't know how that gene's going to express itself. There are many ways in which that can genetically alter due to so many forces beyond our understanding.
Mm-hmm. So it just begs the question, are we supposed to limit our own evolution because our natural progression as a species, we are going to continue learning more about these different technologies that give us the ability to quote unquote play God. If we look at the whole AI movement right now, like it's happening, there's no putting it back in the box. So there is no stopping this progression. So as humans and as people who, we believe our purpose is this expression of love, how do we handle on a collective level our own desire for knowledge that seems maybe it's a little bit beyond what we're capable of handling, or put in the wrong hands could be the end of us?
Well, so I think it goes back to that awareness, right? Being aware of what is occurring and how much I will choose to participate in that which is, going on around me. And it's the same thing with these phones, right? So when phones started out, we've all been there. My daughter bought one when she had enough money, and I made her buy it herself. And you know what? It was so exciting because she could take pictures and listen to music with her phone. Isn't that fucking cool? And then, a year later, I'm like, what's that? What's on the phone? So our kids started out, we're like, you know what? Of course you can get that water gun. All the kids have water guns. They're fun. It's so much fun. And now these are like assault rifles. They are assault rifles. And because they have new apps and new apps and new apps. So this has turned into, now it still plays music, still takes great pictures. I can still talk on the phone and text my friends, but this also has the ability to destroy connection, to destroy understanding of the truth of who I am and what I feel about the meal I'm eating. Because if it didn't get 117 million likes, apparently it was a crappy, bowl of ramen. I mean, so that's awareness is important. What is this doing for me? And what am I allowing this to do to me? And through me. So as we think about the advancements that are occurring all around us, bring it back to that awareness. How am I participating with what's going on? Do I want to participate in this? Because it can become dangerous, right before our very eyes. Because that's, to me, what occurred with giving all these children these phones. They call my daughter's, she's 23. And that was the first year there was a movie out about this, Screenagers. They were the first year of these kids that were called Screenagers. And it's pretty, the evidence supports the idea that it's been very damaging to the emotional, spiritual, physical development of these children.
Yeah, it's almost like we have to really be conscious about how we're going to handle just the fact that this is going to continue progressing in the way that it's going. We are creating, and I'll post this link to this great TED Talk that I love. I forget the guy's name, Sam something, but he's a philosopher and a tech guy. But he says basically we're creating gods, electronic impulses function at about 1,000,000 times faster than biochemical. So we are literally creating machines and gods that operate 1,000,000 times faster than our brains work. So I don't know if you've seen like those two very humanoid robots, Ameka and Sophia. They're like the most advanced humanoid.
Stop. And they're calling her Sophia. Okay. Oh, wow. That's not an accident, folks, because Sophia is another name for the Great Mother. You've got Amma, you've got Mary, you've got Isis, Kuan Yin, Sophia. So, this beautiful, brilliant robot. We're calling her Sophia. I can't imagine.
And
is she pretty?
Yes, and she's gave her a full face of makeup, like perfectly symmetrical face. They call her like the hot robot. And the reason these two robots have gotten so much attention is because the creators, they're brilliant creators, have given them the ability to have human expression on their faces. So it's trippy. You should watch some YouTube videos about it, but you're like, holy shit, we are creating these gods who will one day surpass us. And the question is, are we ready to live with the gods we're creating?
They're never going to surpass us because they don't have a heart. So they can look like they do. They can, show on their face that they love you, but they are machines that are made by man's mad mind in a quest for currency and power and speed and efficiency. And if that's what we want, cool, let's do that. But
that's why those who are choosing a more organic lifestyle, the currency is going to be human connection. That is what's going to make us stand out. But at the same time, I mean, if you just look at, Chat GPT, have you tried any of the Chat GPT stuff?
I'm not going to. You know why? Because of quantum entanglement. So let's be smart, folks. You bring your consciousness, your energy, and you start engaging. Because it's fun. Let's just try it out. Let me put on these goggles and go up to the fucking metaverse. And no, you're quantum entangling with that realm. So no, I have not, but yes, it exists. And you can do it if you want, because
so you can type in whatever. I mean, you can type in, Jordan Peterson was talking about, he asked it looked at his book, and he asked it to write a paper analyzing and comparing the 12th rule in his book with the Taoist expression about death, and like something totally absurd that a typical humanities professor would ask. And the Chat GPT cranked it out in approximately 5 seconds. Beautiful, perfectly written 4-page essay, knocked it out of the park, exactly what he asked for. And he goes, do you know what scared the hell out of me the most? He said, I would not be able to tell that was not my writing, because it just looked at exactly his writing sample from his book that's online and available. So that's what the AI systems are doing. They're not creating yet out of their own. They're simply able to access exorbitant amount of information like that and pretend.
And guess what the human will say? We're not needed. We're not necessary. Why go to school? Why bother to learn to synthesize this information? Why bother to understand this information or organize this information? Why? Because we're not needed anymore. And that's part of the agenda that's being presented, that efficiency, accuracy, and the human, where do we fit into that world, right? Again, I go back to love, and a human without a purpose is a depressed human. So we're on the cusp now of artists, writers, great thinkers, philosophers. Yeah, we don't need you. We don't really need you anymore, because we got Sophia. She's really hot and she's super efficient and she can do it better than you anyway. So where does that leave us as humans? What happens to our, system that has been created, where we strive to access and integrate information and through our own unique filters and create something that we can offer to the world, a product, a paper, a presentation, and it's gonna go right back to the beginning. All that we have to offer is our love. That's the only thing that cannot be created outside of ourselves that's better than our love.
We're essentially creating a world that we can no longer inhabit in so many ways, but AI is one front. At least that's my perspective, and obviously it's going to continue changing very drastically, but I believe you have some information about how we have already done this to ourselves.
Yeah. So in the age of Atlantis, there are many who call Lemuria and Atlantis. It's a myth. It's all myth. So there's a truth in all of that mythology. As in Atlantis, which I don't need to talk about location because there's a lot of differing opinions, but lot of really smart people, smart thinkers, and they.
So hold on, just to back up real quick to give like bigger context. So the time of the Lemurians and the Atlanteans was the same time, and it was before humans.
Right. It was two separate epochs, really, from my understanding, but it's so long ago that we'd say, oh, it's about the same time. Do you know what I'm saying? The Lemuria is believed to be more in the Polynesian islands of, Tahiti, Hawaii, and Lemurians were physical, tangible, like humanoid. I mean, it looked like us, but they were the expression of the divine feminine in its most creative and beautiful and loving form. And then the Atlantean epoch was more masculine. So it was it was the divine masculine in terms of organizing information and the science mind, and the Atlanteans had evolved out of this survival. I mean, they weren't going around, we think of the divine masculine, he can go, hunt and kill and guard and defend and protect. No, when you evolve out of survival, that's where there's time to become the great thinkers and organizers and builders. And, so they built really I don't even want to call it a nation, but crystal cities, just spectacularly beautifully made. Just like incredible. And I've gotten some messages about it and seen some of it in my mind, so it's hard to explain, but it was like, they're like crystal towers and everything's so efficient. And they got to a point where they were playing with creating half man, half animal, because they wanted animals to kind of do some kind of work, but it was like, let's just play around with this. Let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can create. That Frankenstein energy of like, let's just see. And that what happened was I guess, again, this is what I think happened. The creator, the great creator looked down on that and was not pleased. And in his loving, or her, or the energy of love, was this cannot continue. This will destroy life, will destroy life. It was destroying life. it was literally manipulating genetics to create kind of monsters. I mean, it was not beautiful, these creations. And so Atlantis fell. That allegedly is when the great flood came, and Noah's Ark was literally taking our, double-stranded helix, 2 pairs, so that 2 pairs of each of our, human expression would remain, would never be lost. And so here we are as a human, we had to kind of start over. So in the times of Atlantis and Lemuria, many believe we were a 12-stranded species. You've got the 12 tribes. I mean, we could go down many holes or whatever, rabbit holes. Yeah, it's 12, because that was our human expression in both Lemuria and Atlantis. We abused our powers and we had to start all over. And so, then we were rolling rocks up hills with our, oxen cart with, wooden wheels that were square. I mean, we started all over and got to the point where we are now, where as a species, for the most part, we are blessed to have, most of us have, enough food and a roof over our head, thus the exploration of our mind and science and what we can do and what we can create. Think of your life when you are surviving. It's very difficult to be inspired to create. So we've come out of a time where it's not as difficult, and there's room for the creative inspiration to start being cultivated again. And we've been doing this now for hundreds of years, right? As a race, I guess, the Industrial Revolution. I mean, think about these, after great horror. So after a war, after COVID, there's always a period of growth that comes after these periods of destruction. And so we're on the brink right now of this exponential opportunity to decide, do we want to continue down this path of really becoming less organic material? So as we merge with technology, however that looks for you, if you're wearing, we went from these things with the cord, which I still do, and it's still on me. And then it was like, everybody's got the watches here now, and everybody's got the earbuds. And, some people have implants because we kind of need it, and it's actually great. We've got these implants, we've got, all kinds of implants. And what is coming is to be more and more interface with more regularity with artificial intelligence. And if that becomes the norm, we will no longer remain organic material.
Interesting. And it's hard for me because I'm not a scientist, and I have no concept or experience with like discovering something or building something or creating something that I'm like, this could change society. This could help this group of people. There's a part of me that's like, no, we don't stop change. We don't stop evolution. And that's not what you're saying, but it's like, we get the choice. Do we want to use these new technologies? Do they enhance my life in a way that is heart-centered and that's human-centric? And I think going back to where we started with this pursuit of knowledge, if you've heard of a Zen koan, so a Zen koan is this Buddhist practice where actually it's from several different traditions, but it's kind of a riddle, and you sit there and think about it and think about it and think about it, and your head starts to hurt because it doesn't make sense, even though it does make sense. They're basically paradoxes, but the whole point is to exhaust your mental brain so that you just kind of, it breaks. You just give up and you just rest in the energy that there are maybe many truths being represented. Like one example of a Buddhist koan that, or a Zen koan that came up was, I think this is from one of the Kim Kran's decks, but when you meet the Buddha on the road, kill it. Right. So if I sat with that, I'd be like, no, I'm on the road so I can meet God. But then it's like, oh, when you do meet God, kill it. It's like, wait, but I am God. So is there a part of myself I'm killing? Why would I want to kill God that I'm seeking? So that's just an example of kind of these infinity loops our minds can get into that are both beneficial and can be harmful. And I just think about what Jesus said. Jesus said, seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. So there is an element of that we need as humans to grow and evolve. Keep seeking, but also recognize if or when that seeking becomes detrimental, harmful to you or others in your life.
Well, and understand that all of these technologies that are being offered, they're being offered, so we can say, well, yeah, it's happening, it's just happening. It's happening no matter what. It's being offered. What do I choose to participate in? And how do I choose to engage with that which is being offered? So, I mean, this is coming really strongly right now from, the higher realms. It's being offered. It's being offered. This is a choice point for humanity. And there is no right. There is no wrong. It is how you choose to engage and participate in or with the offering. That is all. And so,
yeah, because it wouldn't be healthy to also be like, oh, AI is the end of mankind, like burn it all down. Like that's also not a healthy approach.
right. And how am I then the fullest expression of love if I'm resisting all of which is being offered that appears to not be an expression of love? So, it's that resistance. When I'm resisting what is, I am in a state of disharmony within myself. From a place of disharmony, I cannot offer the fullest expression of love. So we are, as a species, we've very much evolved beautifully and wonderfully and perfectly in the imperfection. So, I shouldn't be trying to channel while I'm talking, but there's a seriousness that we place upon all of this, which pulls us further from the fullest expression of joy and love. And so just think about the ways. Yeah. So it's all wonderful. It's all beautiful. And it's all an opportunity to return to love.
So let your times of seeking be your times of seeking, and let your time of play be play. And maybe they overlap.
And stay tuned because it's going to get interesting. So it's an interesting time we're in. And if we're able to bring that curiosity of a child's mind to that which we are going to see around us, the ride will be a lot more pleasant.
Beautiful. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks. Who Christy. Thank you, Christy. And anyone, yeah, like Claire said, any topics, not like we're the experts, but we sure do like to talk.
We'll tell you what we think.
Yeah, that's right. We will. All right. Love y'all.
Bye.
Bye.